محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تقدموا بين يدي الله ورسوله واتقوا الله إن الله سميع عليم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا ترفعوا أصواتكم فوق صوت النبي ولا تجهروا له بالقول كجهر بعضكم لبعض أن تحبط أعمالكم وأنتم لا تشعرون. إن الذين يغضون أصواتهم عند رسول الله أولئك الذين امتحن الله قلوبهم للتقوى لهم مغفرة وأجر عظيم. إن الذين ينادونك من وراء الحجرات أكثرهم لا يعقلون. ولو أنهم صبروا حتى تخرج إليهم لكان خيرا لهم والله غفور رحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا أن تصيبوا قوما بجهالة فتصبحوا على ما فعلتم نادمين. واعلموا أن فيكم رسول الله لو يطيعكم في كثير من الأمر لعنتم ولكن الله حبب إليكم الإيمان وزينه في قلوبكم وكره إليكم الكفر والفسوق والعصيان أولئك هم الراشدون فضلا من الله ونعمة والله عليم حكيم. وإن طائفتان من المؤمنين اقتتلوا فأصلحوا بينهما فإن بغت إحداهما على الأخرى فقاتلوا التي تبغي حتى تفيء إلى أمر الله فإن فاءت فأصلحوا بينهما بالعدل وأقسطوا إن الله يحب المقسطين. إنما المؤمنون إخوة فأصلحوا بين أخويكم واتقوا الله لعلكم ترحمون. صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق رسوله الكريم. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بفضل الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله والحمد حقه كما يستحقه حمدا كثيرا الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله اللهم لعن ولا ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله اللهم لعنهم جميعا ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله أجمعين محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. Every era has its trials. It's not like when you arrive today, you hear people, Wallah, usulna la ikhir al-zaman. That life, it's reached the end. Look what's happening in the world today. But there is a recurrence. Every now and then you see the trials, you see the tyrant, and you see the victim. And the first victim is always the truth. And those that possess the truth follow. The first victim for everything is the reality. And if you're disillusioned, you tend to want to see what the fantasy is with regard to what this life is all about. However, eventually the light pierces through the darkness. And everything, after it comes to pass, people can see what was right as opposed to what was wrong. Although the ninth holy Imam, Imam Mohammad ibn Ali Al-Jawad, salawatullah salamu alayhi, lived for 25 years. He was able to shake the thrones of many a tyrant. And not only this, he was able to also silence the greatest scholars they had at that time. So this is who we're here to commemorating, someone in this era that was able to be the light that penetrated and went through all this darkness until today where you can see it. Before we look at his life, because today we are commemorating his martyrdom, we need to understand the significance of the ninth holy Imam, Imam Mohammad al-Jawad. We need to understand the crisis that proceeded before his birth. What was taking place before he was born. See, after an event takes place, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came. After him, people looked to see who's next. Although the prophets and the Imams and all those before them mention it over and over and over again. I was having a discussion with a Christian friend of mine. I said, why is it that everything's linked to Peter? And Peter was the one chosen after Jesus, and yet you all follow Paul. And it baffles me. And his response was ridiculous, to say the least. He said, he said, if you're referring to when Jesus said to Simon, who was Peter, his name was Simon, but the reason they called him Peter, because Jesus said to Simon, he called him Petros, which is Greek for rock. He said, you are the rock that my church will be built upon. And his name changed from Simon to Peter because he's going to be that rock that the church will be built upon. He said Jesus was ridiculing him. He said, are you going to be that rock? I said, no biblical scholar has ever said this is the first time I ever see this. Do you know what his response was? He said, are you saying that Jesus doesn't have a sense of humor? He completely went off the argument. But the thing is, the argument at hand, that's forward. Even if you look at the wilayah of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, is concrete. So after Imam al-Qadhim alayhi salam, the seventh holy Imam, was martyred, you had these people called the Waqifiyya. The Waqifiyya were at the point where they said the Imam is Imam al-Zaman. He's like the Imam al-Mehdi. He's gone into a ghaiba and he'll be back. And they were awaited this. And their strongest argument, they had two main guys, Hussein ibn Qiyam and Hussein ibn Yasar. And their main argument was this. They said to Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, they said, for you to be an Imam, you need to have a posterity, you need to have a child. Because one of the signs of you being the Imam until the 12th is you have to have a child. And you do not have a child. At this time, the Imam was not young, and he wasn't in his 20s or 30s. He had reached his 40s, and he did not have a child. So they said, if you are the Imam, then you have to have a child. And then the Imam said to them, for Wallah, he said, by God, لا تمضي الأيام والليالي حتى يولد لي ذكر من صلبي. There'll be days and nights that will pass, and a son will come from my loins. And from my loins, min sulbi. At that time, sometimes we might think, why would he say that? But today, you see how applicable. You got IVFs, you got surrogate mothers, you got people using different seeds for their children. He says, from my loins, yani ibni, from me. He says, min sulbi yaqumu mithla maqami. He will be in my position. Yahiqqu al-haq wa yamhaqu al-batil. That what he will do is establish truth and he will erase falsehood. Just like I am doing as the Imam. So firstly, the Imam's birth silenced every sectarian doubt. All the people that opposed it, be they the Waqifis, there was others amongst them, and I don't want to go into the others that existed because they were also after Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, and they continued from there. But these were the main ones. So his birth was this kind of a blessing. The other thing is the Messenger of God sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam had foretold his birth as well. When he speaks about his birth, he mentions, firstly, he speaks about his mother, Sabiqa and Nobiyah, that his mother was what we call Walad. Any time that a servant, like Nabi Ismail was, his mother was Walad. Any time a female servant has a child, they call her Walad. So she was a Nubian yani, from an African region. That's why he was very dark, Imam Al-Jawad. She was a Nubian from North Middle Africa, around there. And that's where his mother was. And the Messenger of God, when he speaks about her, he says, Tahira Mutahara, when he wants to describe her. That she is purified and she has been made pure. So this is where we're looking at where he is coming from. What kind of a man and what kind of a position and what kind of a status that this Imam possesses. And of the things that the Imam was known for, as we know, is he was known as Al-Jawad. That he is an Imam, that he's generous, and that's when people visit, one of the titles that they've given him is Bab al-Murad. Bab al-Murad means the door of wishes. This is where people get their answers. This is where their prayers answered. This is where people get their prayers accepted. Now, we've moved on to the next segment of his life. Just to give you an idea, because his life began, it took off right from the start. It's not like we're talking about where was he raised. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam says that Allah Azza wa Jal nurtured me for 40 years. And then the Mab'ath happened. But in the case of Imam Al-Jawad, he hit the track running. He began right from the beginning of his life in this case. After Imam Al-Rida was killed, there was an idea that Imam Al-Rida was poisoned, and the one that poisoned him was the tyrant leader Al-Ma'mun Al-Abbasi. Now, this wasn't validated. Of the evidence that we have is that we believe that ma minna illa maqtul aw masmum. The Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam, they have either been killed or poisoned in any way. Yani in the case of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, they were both killed by sword. And Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen was both sword and poison. But with the rest of the Imams, they were all poisoned. They were all poisoned. So that's our first evidence that Imam Rida was poisoned. The second thing that we have, that he was poisoned in the living area or region of where the throne and the governance or the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate was. So no one was brought forward except Ma'mun al-Abbasi to be the one that had killed him. Even up till today, you'll have people that defend this point. Okay? So what Ma'mun did in order to remove this this idea surrounding him, that he was the killer, he brought Imam Al-Jawad, the son of Imam Al-Rida, from Medina to Tus. You might say that Imam Jawad was already there through the miracle of God, yes. But from our understanding is he returned from this. He didn't remain. But there could be an opinion that he remained. I don't know of this. I didn't fully look into it. But all I know is that Ma'mun brought him from Medina to Tus. Why would he do this? To rehabilitate his relationship with the people. Now, because Imam Al-Rida was called Al-Rida, the people had accepted him. In order to show that I'm innocent, let's fix it all. He wanted to marry his daughter to Imam Al-Jawad. Now, one of the things that a lot of people will object to is, firstly, Imam Al-Jawad was 8 or 9 years old. There's no historically, you hear of a child of 8 years being put into marriage. You don't hear that unless you go to Epstein Island. Other than that, you will never hear something like that. So they bring an 8-year-old child and they put him in a position of where they want to marry him. And there was a lot of objection at the time by the Abbasides. They said, what are you doing? You're bringing them back in power. And this is where Al-Ma'mun, after seeing, because Ma'mun was one of those people that understood the position and the station of the Imams but didn't follow them. When they would say, like for example, Muawiyah would know Imam Ali's station. Even when he would bring someone to describe what he was like, the person would speak lowly of the Imam, and then Muawiyah would say, look, that's not what Amir al-Mu'mineen is like. He's like, Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Qasim, Hussein, come sit at the front. Come sit at the front row. Jafar, front row. Front row. Front row. All right. So when he brought in these great scholars of the Islamic world, when I say great, that these people were known of that time to be great scholars, amongst them was Yahya ibn Aktham. These were people that were known, and if you research the history at the time, they were the foremost in this era. They were brought to challenge the Imam at this age. And obviously, with the story, you've all heard it, with the one where he asked him what is the hukum. And I don't want to go into that story today because it's not the idea where. But he silenced them. Not only did he silence them, they conceded. When we say you concede, have you ever seen an argument where people concede? They accept defeat. From who? An 8 or 9-year-old. They accepted defeat from someone at this age. And this is more powerful than when you research the debates of Ali ibn Musa, salawatullahi wa salam alayhi. More powerful. You know why? Because this is a child. See, the argument someone could bring forth when you bring someone in their 40s to debate, they'll say, oh, this guy's been researching for the last 30 odd years. And here he's really come with all the knowledge. You get a child that silences scholars. You know, these aren't people that would have all this knowledge to silence a great scholar, Yahya ibn Aktham, to the point, and he was a chief judge as well, to the point of where he conceded, would establish the Imam was divinely appointed and nothing else. Now let's take a look at the tyrant of the time, because when we look at tyrants of every era, it's repetitious. And yeah, sometimes, you know, I was talking to one of my kids about like Hitler. And a lot of people at the time would think Hitler was in opposition to Churchill. No, all of them were friends. Just when someone steps out of line, they'd say, all right, you know, we need to wash our hands with this guy. And you see, today you saw a good example 20 years ago with Saddam. Saddam in the 1980s, you see Donald Rumsfeld shaking his hand. The Americans would send their biggest celebrity, Muhammad Ali, to sit with him. And when the time goes, Yalla Saddam, you got to go. Yalla Gaddafi, you got to go. Yalla Mubarak, you got to go. You know what I mean? So the tyrants of history have a similar thing. Over time, you will see this. Whenever you go through history, they're all friends, and at the end, the one they get rid of they'll say, oh, that was the worst leader we've ever had. Once their era's gone, they'll bury them into the ground. Oh, you know, that's one of the black pages of our history. We'd rather not speak about it. Do you know what I mean? So, the tyrant at the time of Imam Al-Jawad alayhi salam was Al-Mu'tasam Al-Abbasi. And this guy, firstly, was highly ignorant. Jail. And ignorant, and he wasn't only ignorant, he was illiterate. He was ignorant to the point, when we say ignorant, you know, someone says to you, you're ignorant of this, we say ignorant. You know, these are fighting words. You know, what do you mean by I'm ignorant? You want to have a go? Now, when someone says you're ignorant, you do not know this. He did not know, and this is a theme if you look. A lot of the tyrants were ignorant. You've seen it. Have you? You know, yes, sometimes you look at today, you go, oh my God, how's this guy ruling? He's so petty, so stupid. I remember once they were showing the government in one of the Arab states, and they were asking them to repeat al-ahruf al-abjadiyya. What are they? Alif, Be, Te. You know, imagine like we went up to government employees, you know, governance position, and we said, can you say your ABCs? A, B, C, D, and they didn't know them. They didn't know ahruf al-abjadiyya. No one told me this. I actually watched this. I was shocked. They didn't know how to say the ahruf in Arabic. They didn't know how to say the letters. So this was a theme. And this is why, if you notice, when they tell you the Prophet was illiterate, why would they really push this out? They bang this out because so it can fit with their leaders that are all ignorant. Oh, he's illiterate. Well, so was the Prophet. And the Prophet wasn't illiterate. By proof of the Quran, علمه شديد القوى. Allah taught Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. He was never illiterate. This was one of the fabrications against him. And not only was he illiterate, he ruled like every illiterate tyrant. He ruled through fear and his violent temper. And I'm starting to draw a picture for you of tyrants you've seen today and in the past. Fear and violent temper. You know, I remember I once watched a video where they were having a gathering the cabinet of the Ba'athi government in Iraq, and they were talking about what the Kurds were doing, and the one they used to call Chemical Ali Hassan, they used to call him. He says to him, "I will show them." He says to Saddam, I will punish them for this." And what he did is he killed 5,000 people in a single day in Halabja. 5,000. Why? Because what they do is they show so much fear and they show their fiery temper to the point that's how they get things done. Nahr al-Akhdar wal-Yabis. We'll leave nothing to show that we're here. And this is what Mu'tasim did. His mother was Turkish. So what he did is he bought the Turks. This is how the Turks first came. You want to know how the Ottoman Empire began to enter through Mu'tasim. He brought the Turkish soldiers into the Islamic army. When we say Turkish, it's not racism. The Turks weren't even Muslims at the time. What were the Turks at the time? Who was ruling Turkey? The Byzantine Empire, the Romans. The capital of the Roman Empire was what? History lesson. Constantinople, which is now what? Istanbul. So Istanbul was the capital of the Western world. Istanbul was New York City. That was what Istanbul was. So he was bringing these people that were not Muslim into the Islamic world. Not only that, he would give them uniforms different to the Islamic army uniforms. Their uniforms were better. They had better quality. It's like, when someone goes, all right, I'm going to give you military gear made in the USA. And then they give someone else the Temu version or the Wish version or whatever they call it now. They give them something else. That's what all the Muslims were getting, and the Turks were getting the finest equipment. And they were given the good positions, the good ruling positions, Like I could tell you, if I told you right now, which is more important? For you to be the mayor of New York City, or for you to be the president of the Maldive Islands? Yeah, you think about it. One's the president, the other one's mayor, but what's the Maldive Islands? What are they? Of course, the mayor in New York City is a bigger position. So he would give them positions that they would see of what be a bigger importance, and that wouldn't sound so good, but he'd give the Muslims, all right, you're president of the North Pole. You go in that direction, see you later. But he brought them in there. And they would treat the citizens with contempt. So they'd come in. The beauty of it is what you see today. They've been brought in and they control the world. Exactly the same thing. And they bought they run everything in the Middle East. Exactly, it's not the subhanAllah, it's just a repeat. Okay. Now, even the advisor he had at the time, Muhammad ibn Abdul Malik al-Zayyat, who was Mu'tasim's advisor. And mind you, tyrants generally, who do they bring around them? Yes, men. The ones that, it's good that you did this. It's God bless you, that you've done. Oh, it's good you're burning them. It's good that you're killing them. It's good that you committed this crime. They would never, and this is what we have a saying, Ya Fara'un min fara'anak. They say to Pharaoh, what made you into a Pharaoh? Because Pharaoh in Arabic is now used as like, Namrud in English, Nimrod. Nimrod is Msabbi. If you said someone, you're a Nimrod, it's based from Namrud. So Pharaoh was in Arabic is a tyrant. What made you into a tyrant? He said, no one went against, because people would advise him, you're doing the right thing. You know what I mean? They'd see them, I love you, I love everything you've done, and they give them praise for things they have not done. And to the point, they began making false accusations against Imam Al-Jawad that he was intending on committing a coup d'etat to overthrow the government. That was the accusation. Like they do with a lot of contemporary Muslims today. Before they kill them, they'll tell you they're planning on doing this or that, so you can, accept what they're about to do, and then they commit their atrocities. They said to the Imam that you planning on doing a coup d'etat. But in the case of the Imam, Imam would show signs. And one of these narrations is unbelievable, where they come forward and they bring witnesses. And these are all, Shahdin Zur. They get these false witnesses that they've paid. A bit like you have these stenographers now. You'd see them there on the news, they're reporting something that's absolutely bogus. And they'll report it, these stenographers, they've been paid. So he comes in, these people come in and they testify. And the Imam does something, and this is something we've seen before with Nabi Ibrahim al-Khalil, what is about to happen. Ibrahim al-Khalil, alayhi wa ala nabina wa alihi afdal as-salatu was-salam, when he is brought into court with a false accusation, the judge is about to pass his judgment. And Ibrahim stands up and he says, you know who I am? I'm Ibrahim, the one that you all know survived the fire. He survived the fire of Namrud. He said, if you judge falsely, you will die where you are. So the judge paused because he had seen something happen before. And he refused to pass judgment out of fear. Because there's a stance there. Imam Al-Jawad, when these witnesses walked in, and they said that he was the one, they gave these false testimonies that were prearranged, that were paid off. And he swore by God that he had done no such thing. And they testified falsely against him. He raised his hands to the heavens and said, oh Allah. He said, if they have lied about me, then take them. Now, this incident in the narrations, it says the whole palace began to shake and tremble. And anyone that was trying to stand would fall. So in other words, everything was about to collapse on them. And it's a sign he's showing them. Mu'tasim fell on the floor and implored the Imam, begged the Imam, beseeched the Imam to stop what was happening. And these people, when you sit there and see, they see signs of God. It's not like they don't see them. Just like the people that commit atrocities see signs every day. But they continue. And they continue in the way that they were doing. So then the Imam prayed and it ceased. Because at the end of the day, that's the whole idea of the test. Sometimes, and this is for us to look at in our lives. Sometimes people ask, why doesn't God do something about everything now? Why doesn't God interfere? Why didn't God interfere in Karbala? Why didn't God interfere when they attacked the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen? Why didn't people say this stuff? Well, where's the test? Right from the start, could you imagine every second God did a factory reset? Someone commits a sin, bang, factory reset, let's start again. And he kept doing that. Imagine Noah's Ark every time. Bring out the flood, let's get the boat, sink everyone that's evil. Where's the test? If nothing was to take place, or nothing was to come to pass, if on the day of judgment you're being brought onto the day of judgment and God says you committed such and such sin, and you say, no, I didn't. I tried to shoot this person, but the bullet didn't leave the gun. Yeah, because I stopped it, but so I didn't commit the crime. We don't have criminal intent in Islam. We don't have that. We don't have attempted murder in Islam. You know that. You can't, if you attempt to kill, it's either you killed them or you did not. You don't go to jail for attempted murder. It's either you killed them, unless you obviously injured them. So if I shot at someone and I missed them, there's no such thing as attempted murder. On the day of judgment, you were given a chance by God. So you can change your ways and repent. So in other cases, Allah keeps giving you the chances for us as well. And that's why the test continues. It's not when is it all going to change. No. When am I going to change internally? When am I going to change? That's why the Imam didn't eliminate it here. The problem with the world is me, not the world. When am I going to fix myself? When am I going to become a proper person? When am I going to listen to what people have to say about me and fix myself and change myself? And it's continuous. It doesn't stop. You fall and you get up. You know, like Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein alayhi salam says, Mali, kullama qult, qad salaha sarirati. Every time I think I'm going on the straight and narrow, that's it, straighty 180, I'm fixed up my life. أتتني بلية أزالت بها قدمي وحال بيني وبين خدمتك. Every time I think I'm going on the straight and narrow, something comes along and throws me off. That's a test. That's the way it's meant to be. You are continuously going through tests. That's why the Imam let them go. Ya rahmatullah al-wasi'ah. He let them go. The test has to continue. But finally, what actually ended his life? You know, we're talking about 25 years he only lived for. And there's a lot of events we can go through. I'm trying to summarize them as much as I could. There was a dispute amongst the judges. And this is why it's so important when someone has an opinion for themselves, they can destroy themselves. That's why it's always you need to look at, you know, when someone asks me, Mas'ala Shar'i, even if I know the answer, I always read from the book. I always look it up. Do you know why? I'm not talking if they say to me, is Maghrib wajib? No. You know, that's musallam. But if they ask you certain questions within the salah, that might be contentious. You look it up and you research it. I learned this because my father told me, may Allah have mercy upon him and have mercy upon the souls of your deceased, that even Sayyid Abul Qasim al-Khu'i, who was a marja, he said people used to ask him, he'd grab his risali, his book, that he's researched, that he's studied, that he's written, and he would look it up and he would read it for them. Could you imagine that? And then you get some guy that honestly wouldn't know the difference between tayammum and wudu. He wouldn't know the difference, and he doesn't even know how he's doing ghusl, and he gives out fatwas like he's giving out food vouchers or something. You know, just go, you know, this is halal, this is haram. Yeah, you can do this. I've researched, I've studied. I've got my auntie's cousin's neighbor. They call her a Sheikha. You know, and she told me this, so we'll just go with that. So these judges were disputing about where should a thief's hand be cut if he steals. You've seen them. Sometimes they cut the whole arm. Sometimes they cut all over the place. Some said the wrist, and they cited the verse on tayammum, you know, that they could still do tayammum. Others said the elbow, and they cited the verse on wudu, you know, as a, sorry, they used the verses of tayammum and wudu. Each one's given their argument from the Quran. The problem is, this is you and I, we're deliberating a fatwa or mas'ala. With the Imam, you're talking to the source. With the Imam, it stops there. You know when, La ilaha illallah. You know when Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam is asked to interpret the dreams. And one of the people that asked for the dream, that he tells him that the birds will eat from your head. Do you know what he says? He says to Nabi Yusuf, I made this story up. I didn't even see this dream. This isn't what I saw. And Nabi Yusuf says, Qudiya al-amr. In other words, it will come to pass. It's going to happen. What do you think I was waiting on? What you're going to, astaghfirullah, these are my words. Do you think I'm waiting for you to tell me? I know what's going to happen. He's got a direct link with Allah Azza wa Jal. Alimul ghaybi wa shahada. Allah knows what is present. Allah knows what is unknown. Allah knows everything that you can possibly think and not even think of. So when you come to the Imam, you're going to get the full answer. So the Mu'tasim at the time said, ask the Imam in front of them. The Imam initially declined to answer. Why? See, the Imam declines. These are big judges, and this is very dangerous grounds. And their envy and their jealousy it's cutthroat. Sometimes this is where taqiyya comes in. But then Mu'tasam aqsam alayh. Billah, you have to answer. As if Mu'tasam al-Abbasi knows God. So the Imam said that they must be cut at the finger roots. You see there? That's it. That's where they must be cut. So they said, where's your evidence for this? And then he mentioned the verse that the masajid, which are the masajid al-sab'a that we use, lillah, فَلَا تَدْعُوا مَعَ اللَّهِ أَحَدًا, that the 7 parts must touch the floor in sujood. What are they? Your forehead, your palms, your knees, and your toe. Your big toe has to, they're the 7 parts that touch the floor. He said if you cut from the wrist, then the palms do not touch the floor. So he says, Al-Masajid Lillah, these 7 parts belong to who? Belong to Allah. They're out of bounds. So Al-Mu'tasam accepted and he applied that law at the time. There was one of the main judges, Ahmad ibn Abi Duwad or ibn Abi Dawood. It's Ibn Abi Duwad, generally it's pronounced as. He felt publicly humiliated. He felt like this was a humongous humiliation that this nobody, this child as he perceived him, and I'm a grand judge, I've got white hairs, how can this person be putting me in this position? And he went to Al-Mu'tasam and he told him, this isn't only upon me, this is upon you. You have appointed me as your grandest judge. You have appointed me as your best judge, and you have allowed this man to humiliate me. So, but they both wanted to get rid of the Imam. There are many narrations on how he was martyred. Some say that it was even his wife, like the ones before that were poisoned by their wives, the other 2 that were poisoned by their wives. But other narrations say no, the plain plot, well obviously, even though it's through the wives, it's usually through the tyrant, as was the case with the other 2. In the case of Imam Al-Jawad, Al-Mu'tasam and his judge, after being humiliated, because obviously this chief judge, Ahmad ibn Abi Duwad, had good influence on Mu'tasam, they decided with their plot, and look at the way they work. You know, sometimes when you see, we say shaitan mafakkar fiha, you see the plots that they do today, they, you know, false flags and stuff, exactly the same. So they said, we'll get someone that is unaware that he's given the Imam's poison. Because you imagine, for example, if I told you, press this button, so it can open a door, and the button you're pressing fires a nuke, for example. You press it nonchalantly, you wouldn't care. You press the button, what's happening? You don't even know what's happening. So they gave this man, this outsider, the poison without him knowing, poison food. And they told him, well, you know, get to know these prominent people, invite them to your house for dinner. And they sent someone else to talk to this man as well. So they fully cut themselves, you know. It was like مثل الشبكة of Umala for it to get to, like they do today, obviously. So the person that was doing it was unaware. I'm almost finished. The kids can have their way in almost very soon. So this man invited the Imam amongst these people. And the Imam didn't want to reject because a Muslim was inviting him. So he said, would you come and bless and grace my house? The Imam accepted. At the dinner, the Imam, upon eating, realized that, you know, he had consumed, obviously, the poison. And this is one of the things that it breaks your heart, wallah. The Imam asked to leave. He sought permission to leave. And the host said, there's no way you leave. You're the main guest. So then the Imam even as he is poisoned and even as he's in pain from this poison, all he was thinking about was protecting who? This man. He said to him, it is better for you if I leave. Because basically they've put him in the problem and they're going to put it in the ras of this Zalami. This man's going to cop it. Everyone else is going to get out. That man's going to get the blame for killing the Imam. You know, they're going to make him into the target, put him up, and the real perpetrators get off scot-free. The Imam was pretty concerned about this man. And he passed from this world like a martyr, like his forefathers, when he went home. And there's many narrations of how he was poisoned. There's also one that states that his wife was the agent. But of the narrations that I found the most sound was this one, because it's typical of and they're all accepted. It's not like I'm taking it because I like it, sounds the best, but it's typical of a tyrant's way. It's typical of the methodology that I see today, and we see all the time around us. All my life, you see these false flags happening, all these ways of people committing crimes and placing them with someone that's none the wiser, and the way the dunya functions, the way the tyrant works. Now you think of this Imam. He lived for 25 years. He silenced the empire, yani the scholars of an empire, not just the empire, as a child. And he provided divine knowledge. This is another thing with the Imams. Their ability with divine knowledge was not limited to age. And a lot of people, this is the problem they have when you talk about Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. How can a child do this? Subhanallah, Allah shows you in the Quran, when they come up to Maryam and she says to them, speak to the child. They go, we want us to speak to an infant that's in his crib. This is a newborn child. He's going to be able to speak to us. And the thing is that we discover that the most dangerous thing that a tyrant faces is not a sword. It's not a sword. But the truth. That's the most dangerous thing. You take a look. In the world you live today, the biggest thing that they suppress today is free speech. They suppress it. Why? They don't want truth to ever get out. If you think violence is a problem, well, look how many false flags they perpetrate in their own countries. They kill their own people. Violence is not an issue for them. They fear truth. The devils of this world, the tyrants of this world, the enemies of God, the only thing they fear is the truth. And the only thing that you can do, the best thing you can do, there's other things we can do, but the best thing that we can do is to propagate this religion through our children, by attending Islamic gatherings. MashaAllah, this year, you know how many people this year contacted me, and they broke my heart, because they were going to Hajj, and we're not going. People contact me and ask me questions about the Hajj, and but you see people at this time, and there's some of them will contact me and they'll tell me, oh, my parents don't want me to go because of the current situation. Go. You're going to Makkah al-Mukarramah and Medina al-Munawwara to go to the holy sites, to show the strength in your religion that it still exists, that we're still answering the call of Allah Azza wa Jal, to continue to propagate and to bring forth your religion and let your religion stand. If you see someone like the Imam, a 25-year-old, when he was martyred, was able to destroy an entire group of judges with his arguments and scholars, to the point from their envy, they ended his life. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal, and just a point before I go there, that in his final act, he was merciful to the one that administered the poison. And imagine that, even at the final moment of his life. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to hasten the reappearance of our master Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Mahdi. And this is all times, even if the world gets, Yeah. Even if the world gets, people say the war's over or whatever. No. It doesn't matter. You need the Imam even if we're living in palaces above the ocean or whatever. We need the Imam. This is the main thing. Also, I want to read Al-Ayah Al-Mubarakah 5 times for Al-Hajj Malik Saleh, who's in a very critical condition right now in the hospital, for Allah to give him health, and this has been requested from us, so we'll read it all together. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء 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 أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. يا الله 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 يا Allah, we ask you, Allah, on this night where we commemorate the martyrdom of the 9th Holy Imam, Al-Imam Mohammad ibn Ali al-Jawad, Bab al-Murad, we face in that direction. Oh Allah, we ask you to have mercy and to cure the sick, especially Al-Hajj Malik Saleh, in the moment that he's in. We ask you, Allah Azza wa Jal, to give us relief in the situation and victory over our enemies and all those that mean us ill will. Oh Allah, we ask you to return anyone that wishes ill will upon us and upon the Muslims, for this ill will to return upon them. Oh Allah, we ask you to hasten the reappearance of our master Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Mehdi, arwahuna fida. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين، وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات وإلى أرواح موتانا جميعا، ولقضاء الحوائج وقبول الأعمال وقضاء وشفاء المرضى وغفران الذنوب وتعجيل الفرج وحسن العاقبة. رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.